English Renaissance theatre, also known as early modern English theatre, refers to the theatre of England, which occurred between the Reformation and the closure of the theatre in 1642. It includes the drama of William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and many other world-famous playwrights. It is sometimes called Elizabethan theatre. This term, however, refers only to the play written and performed in England during the reign of Queen Elizabeth. At the beginning there weren't actors, but minstrels that were links between the Anglo-Saxon scopes. They sang the long poems of Hero, and the later theatre. He could be found at King's Court in Castle, in Market Place, and speaking or singing his story. The actors of that period, the craft guilds, organized and acted moving from one station to another one. They moved by a double-deck wagon. On the first floor they did their performance, and on second floor rested. This wagon was called Pageant. They started also to write liturgical plays, and the stories were longer and acted not in Latin but in English. The number of plays which have survived is limited, for many cycles have been preserved, those of Chester, York, Townley and Coventry. Of these, the York is the most complex. It presents the Bible story from the creation to the Day of Judgment. Besides, Renaissance theatre derived from several medieval theatre traditions, such as the mystery plays that formed a part of religious festival in England and other parts of Europe during the Middle Age. The mystery plays were legends based on biblical themes, originally performed in church but later were also performed in the religious festival. So the last decades of 16th century saw the booming of the theatre. Plays were usually performed in courtyards or public halls. The first to be built was the theatre, followed by the curtain. Other important theatres were the Rose and the Swan, but the most successful of all was the Globe.
The Globe Theatre was a theatre in London associated with William Shakespeare. It was built in 1599 in Southwark, South London, by Shakespeare's playing company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, and was destroyed by fire on 29 June 1613. But a second Globe Theatre was rebuilt on the same site by June 1614 and closed in 1642. A modern reconstruction of the Globe, named Shakespeare's Globe, opened in 1997. The Globe's actual dimensions are unknown, but of course it was an amphitheatre that could contain 3,000 spectators. At the base of the stage there was an area called the Pit, where, for a penny, people would stand on the ash-strewn earthen floor to watch the performances. Around the Hayard were 3 levels of stadium-style seats, which were more expensive than standing room. A rectangle stage platform, also known as an apron stage, thrust out into the middle of the open-air Hayards. On this stage there was a trap door for use by performers to enter from the cellarage area beneath the stage. Large columns on either side of the stage supported a roof. The ceiling under this roof was called the heavens and was painted with clouds and the sky. A trapdoor in the heavens enabled performers to descend using some form of rope and harness. The black wall of the stage had 2 or 3 doors on the main level, with a curtained inner stage in the center and a balcony above it. The doors entered into the tiring house, a backstage area, where the actors dressed and awaited their entrance. The balcony housed the musicians and could also be used for scenes requiring an upper space.
Generally, the Elizabethan playhouse was small, circular or octagonal, and it was built around the courtyard, where the poorest spectators stood, exposed to rain and sun, because there was no roof. The rich people stood in 3 rows of galleries, so the ticket was for everyone. The poor people paid a penny. More affluent audience could sit in the gallery paying 2 pence. Minimum rates did not change over time. In 1518 the poorest citizen could obtain admission to curtain of the theatre for a penny. In 1640 the entrance of the Globe or the Red Bull cost exactly or the same amount, while the entrance for private theatres amounted to 5 or 6. The stage was a large platform called the apron stage because its shape was like an apron of the pregnant woman. The spectators were free to move during the performance and create a unique relationship with the actors. At the back of the stage there were 2 side doors. The doors opened into the inner stage, which was used by the actors as a dressing room. When necessary, the inner stage was used also to represent tombs and bedrooms. Over the inner stage there was the upper stage, which formed a balcony that could be used to represent the wall of the castle or a town. A famous example of its use was the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. Performance took place in daylight. There was no scenery, so there was a number of scenes, and much was left to the imagination of the public. The costumes were rich, and they were often bright in color and visually interesting. They were expensive, however, so usually players were contemporary clothed regardless of the time of the period of the play.
Occasionally, a lead character would wear a conventionality version of more historically accurate garb, but secondary characters would more naturally remain in contemporary clothing. There were music and sound effects. The scenes were very simple, in fact the tray was sufficient to indicate indoors. But it's important to remember that in the age of Shakespeare, people went to the theatre to listen to the plays and not to see them. Finally, all social classes went to the theatre, nobles, lawyers and citizens. The acting companies function on a repertory system. Unlike modern productions that can run for months or years on end, the troupe this year rarely acted the same play 2 days in a row.
In 1613 the globe was destroyed by a fire, and after a year it was rebuilt, but shortly was closed, because the rising Puritan movement was hostile toward theatre. Politically, playwrights and actors were clients of the monarchy and aristocracy, and most supported the royalist cause. The Puritan faction, long powerful in London, had the control of the city early in the English Civil War, and in 1642 ordered the closure of the London theatre. They remained closed for most of the next 18 years, reopening after the restoration of the monarchy in 1616. They offered plays which were alive, and for the first time the women were admitted on the stage. Now the plays could be performed at night thanks to artificial lighting on the stage, but the audience sat in the dark. The scenery could be changed, and the actors did not enter from the doors at the back on the stage, but from side doors. Playwrights took inspiration from France because the public wanted to relax and enjoy the atmosphere.
The theatre was not for classes as in the Elizabethan period, but only upper classes could go there.
As though most of the plays written for the Elizabethan stage have been lost, over 600 remain. Some of the men and women representational dramatists who wrote these plays were educated at either Oxford or Cambridge, like William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. Playwrights were normally paid in increments during the writing process, and if their play was accepted, they would also receive the projects from one day's performance. However, they had no ownership of the plays they wrote. Once a play was sold to a company, the company owned it, and the playwright had not control over casting, performance, revision, or publication. Playwrights usually preferred to collaborate with other people for the realization of their work. The artists who generally refused the collaboration were Johnson and Shakespeare. Dividing the work, of course, meant dividing the income, and genres of the period included the history play, which depicted the English or European history. Shakespeare plays about the lives of kings such as Richard III and Henry V belonged to this category, as do Christopher Marlowe's Edward II. There were also a number of history plays that dealt with more recent events. Tragedy was a popular genre. Marlowe's tragedies were exceptionally popular, such as Dr. Faustus and Joe Malta. Marlowe composed works on ugly controversial, breaking many taboos of the era. In his dramas, he deals with homosexuality, the wars for the conquest of power, regicide. Besides, Shakespeare deals with different themes like love, revenge, and the wish of power.
We know so much about his works, but we don't have exact news about Shakespeare's life. Maybe he was born in 1564. He attended the local grammar school, but there is no evidence that he attended university. He learned grammar, logic and rhetoric on a firm Latin base. He married Anne Hathaway, and she gave him a daughter and 2 twins. As we said before, he joined a theatrical company, Lord Chamberlain's Man, that was later called the King's Man. Then, the loss of his child must have affected Shakespeare deeply, and in a work written at that time, King John, a character, expresses the author's sorrow. In 1609, his 154 sonnets were published, but no manuscripts of William Shakespeare plays exist. Some editions appeared in quarto, but the first complete edition of his work is considered the first folio, of 1623. He wrote lots of works such as Hamlet, The Tempest, Macbeth, A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Merchant of Venice, Othello, Romeo and Juliet, and so on.
Macbeth is one of the most important tragedies of William Shakespeare. It tells about a hero, Macbeth, returning from a battle with his friend, and during the journey he meets three